Remember that the idea of dependency injection is that we're creating sockets in our core application, and these sockets will accept any component as long as the components have a plug that fits into that socket. So the first step to implement dependency injection in our solution is to take the components of our application and fit them with the plug that we can insert back into the core application. How we usually add plugs onto our components is that we extract an interface from our classes. Let's do one together and then discuss it. So I'm just going to open up my email sender. Let's have a look at our email sender class. To make a plug that fits perfectly over this class, I'm going to declare an interface that exposes its public methods. I'm going to call it iNotificationProvider because I want to keep it generic. Now, the signature of a class is the public properties and methods that it exposes. To make the interface fit perfectly over the class, I'm going to add the public methods and properties from the class onto the interface. That's easy here because the email sender class exposes only a single public method. So I can just add bool send string to string subject string body. Now I'm just going to specify that the email sender class implements the iNotificationProvider interface. Because the email sender class implements the iNotificationProvider interface, I can now stick the email sender plug into any iNotificationProvider socket. Let's do the same thing with the other components. The file system logger class exposes more public methods than the email sender. Rather than manually add all of the public methods to the interface, I can use the built-in refactoring tools in Visual Studio or an external tool like JustCode or ReSharper to make my life easier. I use ReSharper, so I'm going to use it to extract the interface. So I'm just going to go Shift-Control-R on the class and choose Extract Interface. I'm going to give it a more generic name. I'm just going to call it an iLogger. I'm going to say include all the public methods. There we go. As we can see now, it's extracted the iLogger interface with all the public methods from the class. I don't need to expose getTempPath on my interface because I don't want that on the socket, so I can remove that one. But now we can see also that file system logger is implementing that interface. Let's do the same for our other classes. So for our order repository, Shift-Control-R, extract interface, make it iOrder repository is fine. And for our custom repository, so now we've taken our components, extracted interfaces, and specified that each component implements the corresponding plug. The next step for us is to update our application and add sockets for those plugs to go into. We're going to do this by adding a constructor to our customer controller class. And then we'll specify the interfaces we created as parameters for the constructor. So I'm adding my constructor. Now I can come up here and say iNotificationProvider. It needs to be injected. I'm going to say the notification provider parameter. Now I need to store it somewhere. So I'm going to create a private iNotificationProvider underscore notification provider, and then I'll do the assignment in here. What I've done here is I've said that whenever I create a customer controller, I need to inject a class that implements the iNotificationProvider interface. In other words, I've made a socket in my application, and I can insert any class that matches the iNotificationProvider plug into it. Now I can update my controller to use the injected dependency instead of hardwiring in the email sender. So I'll come down here to where I was instantiating the email sender, and I can remove that now. And where I was using the hard-coded one, now I can just use my injected dependency. The important point here is that we've simplified the code, and I can now choose what dependency to inject rather than being locked into one specific implementation. Let's finish decoupling this class. The first time I added the dependency into the constructor, I typed it all manually. I'm going to use a few resharper shortcut keys now to make this a bit faster. So I'm going to say I want an I custom repository. Hit space, control space, choose custom repository. I'm going to hit Alt Enter and say introduce an initialize field. Do the same thing with the I order repository. I like to put my logger on the end. Excellent. So now I can come back here, I can remove the hard coding of the custom repository. I can remove my hard coding of the file system logger and the order repository. Fantastic work. I've removed all of the instances of hard-coded dependencies, and our controller is now completely decoupled from all of its dependencies.